This is another quick video today, and it's going to be on why we decided to leave the US for good. I know you're probably expecting me to say it was because of politics, but it wasn't. We left the US 7 years ago when we had a great president, and we were very proud of that. But it was just time for us to go. The main reason why we decided to just let everything go and try to make a new life for ourselves somewhere else was because growing up, I'd always wanted that sense of adventure, discovering new places and experiencing new things. And so, for as long as I can remember, it's always been travel. I knew I didn't want any kids and I wanted to travel a lot. And so I actually resisted getting married until I was 42 because I really didn't want to. I really enjoyed my travels. And it was all I really looked forward to. But once we got married, I met someone who also loved to travel, and he had actually lived in Melbourne all by himself, and he had moved to the US um, by himself. So he had a taste for travel. So it was a good pairing. And the major reason was the passing of one of my older sisters. She had breast and lung cancer, and after all the dreams that she had of doing, everything after she raised her kids, she was going to travel, and that didn't happen, of course, because as we all know, life is what life is what happens when you're busy making plans. So after she passed, it really spurred me on, and I sort of wondered what happened because we had been thinking of traveling as soon as we had gotten married, and then somehow we ended up, getting the big house and the big cars and the big white picket fence and all that kind of stuff. And that woke us up because we realized it wasn't what we had wanted, but yet here we are. In the US, you know, you're on this hamster wheel where you're supposed to go to school, go to work every day, and have the same routine, shop and buy things and try and keep up with your neighbors. And it was all, everything was geared towards like being in debt all the time. And that was getting old for me, and it was definitely getting old for him, especially because he wasn't used to that kind of culture. So once that happened, we were like, okay, are we going to do what we want to do, or do we want to keep doing this? And I decided that no, I wanted to really travel, and at that point I had been working a lot of years, so it was the best time to think about making a move. Also, a few months after my sister passed away, his father passed away. So that was a second shocker and really lit the fire under our butts, so to speak. So that was a pressing point. And so we formulated a plan. What are we going to do? How are we going to accomplish moving to a different place? And that's when I started doing my research. Where were we going to live? What are the cost of living everywhere else, and all the things I had already talked about in the last video if you were watching. So once I narrowed down that we were going to Malta, it became a matter of how much are we going to need, the logistics of the move. It took us about 3.5 years to save up enough money and do everything that we had wanted to do and prepare for our new life. But once we did that and we made the move, it was great. And it's like a relief after all the hard work that we had done. So the first thing was the process of mourning and wanting to live a new life. That was a major reason for leaving. The second reason, of course, was the cost of living, because at that point I had decided, like I said, I didn't want to work anymore. And I had been a pharmacist for so many years, and I was tired of it because it seemed like it wasn't moving anymore towards patient care. It was more towards profit and corporate greed, and I had gotten really tired. My specialty had been in HIV care and oncology, so I was really liking that because I got to interact more with the patients. But once I went to a chain pharmacy, it wasn't the same. It was just like, you're a number, you're supposed to do this thing, answer the phone in 15 seconds, get the drive through. It was so much crap that I didn't like. So I had been thinking about that and I wanted to get away. So luckily, and this is one thing, if you've read any of my blog posts about making sure you have all your ducks in a row, I wanted to make sure that I qualify for Social Security when I get old. So I made sure that I had all my points. And if you're not sure about that, I will link to the actual blog post I wrote on that if you want to read up on it and why I think you should do all these things before you think about becoming a digital nomad. So that was the second thing, locked to the third thing. I wanted to leave because I was tired of working. And the third one was the cost of living. Now, doing our research, and in a future episode, I will touch on the cost of living between the US and Spain, where we are now, and what our cost of living, it's been so much lower. So the cost of living is just a huge thing because our money could stretch further, of course. If we had stayed in the US, there was no way I could have stopped working and living the life that we live now. So by taking advantage of the fact that it costs less somewhere else, it made life a whole lot easier and the decision a lot easier too. I remember even though my car was a 2002 car, when we sold it and we left in 2013, from the sale of that car, I actually still remember very clearly that we lived for a whole year in Malta just from the sale of that used car from 2002. So you can just guess how much cheaper it is when you live overseas. And it's not true that you have to focus on like Asian countries and Mexico because it's almost as cheap to live in Europe. And for us, it actually had an added benefit because we were also close to his mom, who was, feeling lonely after losing her husband of many years. So Malta was like an hour away by plane for us. So it just made sense. So that was our third reason for leaving was the cost of living, because really it's a huge thing. And the fourth one was to be close to family, and it's only a 6 hour flight for me from Madrid to go back home to visit my family. Now, I say Madrid because we're no longer in Malta. We lived in Malta for almost 2 years before moving to Spain. The last reason the second to the last reason we wanted to move was because of travel. We both wanted to see a lot of Europe, and it gets very expensive when you're doing it from the US. First, you have really long flights. You're talking 10, 11, 12 hours. We lived in California and Houston, so it was long. And you have 2 weeks vacation. By the time you get there, you have jet lag. It's time to come back around. So you have jet lag. You stay for a couple of days, and then you're back on the plane. So by being in Europe itself, we were closer to a lot of countries, and we've actually had the opportunity to travel to a lot of countries in Europe. So that was, a very good reason for us. It saved money. A lot of times we can get a flight from Madrid or from Valencia to Porto in Portugal, and it's $14.99 or $19.99 for each person each way. So for less than €100, we can visit for a week, and the cost of living there is cheap. So that was a very big thing because it meant we could save a lot of money and our money stretched further. The last thing I think would be the healthcare. Had we stayed in the US, there's no way we would have been able to stop working because it was just outrageous how much we were going to have to pay for healthcare. I was being subsidized by my company, so we were paying about $270, I think, a month, for us, and the company was picking up the rest. We have like $100 deductible for like hospital and $25 copay for the doctor's visits, which was nice. But once we stopped working, it was going to be like 900 plus dollars a month. Now, if you don't work, there's no way you're going to be able to. Well, at least for us, there was no way we could afford that without working. So it didn't make any sense. On one of the next videos I'll do, I'll talk about the cost of healthcare, what we're paying in the US for doctor's visits and deductibles and all that, and what we're paying now in Spain. And you'll see that the difference is just astronomical, and it just made sense. So for us, those were the major reasons why we felt we could have a better quality of life here in Europe. And so far, we've been proven right. And that's it. You have to find your own way and figure out what's very important to you. And if you're really determined to make it happen, you'll find ways to do it. And I'm glad that we were able to like buckle down and save, because ultimately it comes down to dollars and cents. So that's it. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you on the next one.